The Buddhist Therapy Episode 2 by Venerable Rung Ruang Papas Saro, Dr. Rung Ruang Lim Chupatipa. In order to modify the Buddhist practice for the practice in modern world, the modified Buddhist therapy consists of two parts: serenity and insight observation. The part of serenity focuses on mindfulness development and then applying the mindfulness to bring in a proper dharma to abandon unwholesome thoughts, so that the mind is calm and becomes seclusion with happiness. In effect, this is directly resolve most of mental illness. While the part of insight observation focuses on cognition development, which is the path and way for Buddhist enlightenment. The Buddhist therapy for mind development can be presented as follows. The second part, the advanced level on insight observation for cognition development. The right concentration is necessary because it will enhance the mindfulness to be stronger and to be able to continue the observations on a series of mental phenomena. In the insight observation, we will establish mindfulness to observe mental phenomenon arising inside the mind, seeing the nature of each mental phenomenon on how it will behave as an individual and in related with others, to understand the cause and effect, especially if it is beneficial to life, saying wholesome, or it is harmful to life, saying unwholesome. This introspective learning is very essential to educate the mind to know on how to handle any arising mental phenomenon properly, so-called cognition. Step 2.1. Insight Observation Introduction. This is an introduction to the practice of insight observation for cognition development, including the principle of insight observation, the 4 mindfulness foundations, the research on Dharma, the 3 characteristics of nature, the process of dependent origination, the 4 noble truths, the wisdom development, the destruction of defilements by wisdom. Step 2.2. The 4 mindfulness foundations. The insight observation will focus on 4 foundations, namely body, feeling, mind, and Dharma, the knowledge, as follows. The observation on body, the observation on feeling, the observation on mind, the observation on Dharma, wisdom development. The 4 mindfulness foundations is the way to have a clear investigation on what the mind is as it really is, especially a specific pattern of mind processing by certain cause and effect in the process of dependent origination. Step 2.3. The research on Dharma. By establishing mindfulness to see arising mental phenomena inside the mind, we will conduct researching on the nature of these mental phenomena as they really are, to gain knowledge of the truth of life in 2 aspects, namely the characteristic of an individual mental phenomenon, and what is the cause and effect of each one to others in a series of the process of dependent origination as follows. The 3 characteristics of mental phenomenon in nature, that is, every phenomenon is impermanent, deteriorating, and no self. The process of dependent origination. By observing the cause and effect of each mental phenomenon, of which function in a specific pattern of mind processing acting as the operating system of mind. Step 2.4. The advanced cognition that life is no self. After realizing that the thoughts are not real, then we further investigate on the origin of how a thought is formulated. We can realize that a thought is composed of several states of objects. Moreover, each one of them is impermanent, deteriorating, and no self. After making an insight observation to see what it is as it really is, both in terms of an individual mental phenomenon and a series of cause and effect in the process of dependent origination, then we make an insight investigation to gain knowledge. That is, what being alive is just a stream of consciousness with its associated states of mind. There is no such a self, or self as possessing consciousness, or consciousness as in self, or self as in consciousness of being someone who controls and dictates the live to be whatsoever. In fact, a self is an assumption that we create when to feel happy or painful at the feeling in the process of dependent origination. After then we keep on this assumption throughout the process of dependent origination as being alive. The Buddha explained the identity view come to be, assumption, of being a self while processing the object of consciousness in related to form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and consciousness, and the way to cognition development as follows.
Venerable Sir, how does identity view come to be?
Here, the uninstructed world, who is not a seer of the noble ones and is unskilled and undisciplined in their dharma, who is not a seer of superior persons and is unskilled and undisciplined in their dharma, regards form as self, or self as possessing form, or form as in self, or self as in form. He regards feeling as self, perception as self, volitional formations as self, consciousness as self, or self as possessing consciousness, or consciousness as in self, or self as in consciousness. That is how identity view comes to be.
But, Venerable Sir, how does identity view not come to be?
Here, the instructed noble disciple, who is a seer of the noble ones and is skilled and disciplined in their dharma, who is a seer of superior persons and is skilled and disciplined in their dharma, does not regard form as self, or self as possessing form, or form as in self, or self as in form. He does not regard feeling as self, perception as self, volitional formations as self, consciousness as self, or self as possessing consciousness, or consciousness as in self, or self as in consciousness. That is how identity view does not come to be.
What, Venerable Sir, is the gratification, the danger, and the escape in the case of the five aggregates?
The pleasure and cheerfulness, monk, that arise in dependence on form. This is the gratification in form. That form is impermanent, suffering, and subject to change. This is the danger in form. The removal and abandonment of desire and lust for form. This is the escape from form. The pleasure and cheerfulness that arise in dependence on feeling. This is the gratification in feeling. That form is impermanent, suffering, and subject to change. This is the danger in feeling. The removal and abandonment of desire and lust for form. This is the escape from feeling. Similar description is applied to perception, volitional formations, and consciousness. Independence on perception. Independence on volitional formations. Independence on consciousness. This is the gratification in consciousness. That consciousness is impermanent, suffering, and subject to change. This is the danger in consciousness. The removal and abandonment of desire and lust for consciousness. This is the escape from consciousness.
Saying,
Good, Venerable Sir.
that monk delighted and rejoiced in the Blessed One's statement. Then he asked the Blessed One a further question.
Venerable Sir, how should one know and see so that in regard to this body with consciousness and in regard to all external signs, I-making, mind-making, and the underlying tendency to conceit no longer occur within?
Any kind of form whatsoever, monk, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near. One sees all form as it really is with correct wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Any kind of feeling whatsoever, any kind of perception whatsoever, any kind of volitional formations whatsoever, any kind of consciousness whatsoever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, one sees all consciousness as it really is with correct wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. When one knows and sees thus, then in regard to this body with consciousness and in regard to all external signs, I-making, mind-making, and the underlying tendency to conceit no longer occur within.
Step 2.5. The Four Noble Truths. After having a good understanding on how the mind functions as a whole system, and developing a cognition that life is no self, and then we will further systematically investigate on how we can improve the quality of life by having a systematic review on a life by the Four Noble Truth analysis as follows. Problem statement. The landscape of the world where all beings living together. Root cause analysis. The law of nature, that is, everything happens in the world is under the law of cause and effect. Objective. To make an end of suffering. Action plan. The Noble Eightfold Path. By applying the Four Noble Truth analysis on the process of dependent origination as a system, then we gain knowledge that firstly, all unwholesome thoughts are caused by the continuation of the process of dependent origination. Secondly, components in the process of dependent origination can be classified into three groups, namely the acting processing that are happening very fast, the causing processing that we should abandon, and the affecting processing that we can detect. Therefore, thirdly, the way to get rid of an arising unwholesome mind is to terminate the process of dependent origination, focusing on the causing parts within the process of dependent origination at craving, clinging, and ignorance in order to destruct the finest defilements of the three kinds of taints in the process of dependent origination, namely the taint of sensual pleasure at craving in the process of dependent origination, the taint of existence at the 5 aggregates subject to, clinging in the process of dependent origination, and the taint of ignorance at the ignorance in the process of dependent origination. This is an ultimate know-how for the destruction of all kinds of defilements to make an end of suffering in life. That is, the mind liberation. Step 2.6. The achievement of mind liberation after the destruction of defilements by wisdom. Clearly, an ultimate goal of life development is to destruct all kinds of defilements or problems that may occur inside the mind. On the day of enlightenment, the Buddha discovered that all problems in life were caused by the dysfunctions of mind, starting from the finest defilements, then being aggravated to be the lower fetters of unwholesome thoughts of middle defilements, then being further aggravated into the rough defilements of greed for powers, properties, hatred of fear, anger, and frustration, delusion of the world from reality. Therefore, the only way to resolve these problems was to destruct the problem at the beginning of the finest defilement in the process of dependent origination driving the aggravation of problems inside the mind, namely craving, clinging, and ignorance of the process of dependent origination. The 3 kinds of defilements can be destructed by the Dharma of following strategy. The rough defilements to be destructed by morality study. The middle defilements to be destructed by mind study. The finest defilements to be destructed by wisdom development. As a matter of fact, if we can completely get rid of the finest defilements, then automatically all the middle defilements and rough defilements are destructed as well, because there is no source for the aggravation of defilement within the process of dependent origination anymore. The Buddhist therapy is the simplification of Buddhist practice for mind development. The first part of serenity is applicable to people in general and to cure people who has mental illness problems, because the main mental illness of depression, anxiety, attention deficit, obsessive and compulsive disorders, and psychosis are exactly the middle defilements of the 5 lower fetters in Buddhism. The Buddhist practice in serenity is recommended to directly resolve the mental illness. The second part of the Buddhist practice of insight observation is an advanced level of Buddhist practice for wisdom development, which is beyond the scope of this study. This Buddhist technique is proven to be very effective in Buddhism for several thousands of years.